Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. Esteem a New Woman. The devilish diva starts on the road to becoming a new creature in Christ in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem a New Woman at Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. I was on Facebook the other day when somebody posted up a picture of an AI meme of a brother hanging out on the street checking out the honeys. And as he was checking out the honeys, he had an apprehensive look on his face, fearing that all of those girls he was checking out possibly had HIV. Now, this picture was basically made recently using AI and shows how little has changed in the black community as related to sexually transmitted diseases, because when I looked at this picture from today as related to how many black people see the whole situation with HIV, it sadly shows me how nothing has changed from the 35 years when I was a teenager, when the HIV epidemic was giving lots of black boys, black men, black girls, and black women AIDS. Now, back in the 1980s, what was really the saddest part about it was that many black people really did not take this entire AIDS epidemic very seriously. And since many black people didn't take the AIDS epidemic very seriously, this is what led to this STD going out here and doing overall devastating damage to the overall black community. Now, Brian Solange did a fantastic video going in depth talking about how HIV basically ravaged through the black community in the late 1980s and 1990s, and I recommend you go check that one out. But as someone who basically lived through that era, I can tell you from personal experience, one of the reasons why HIV and AIDS basically totally changed the dating scene in the black community was because many in the black community did not really see it as the serious threat that many other communities saw it as. Now, in the black community, basically a lot of black folks were sitting there thinking that HIV was only an alphabet person's disease. However, what was going on actually was that a lot of black folks, because we did not get a good sexual education, because many of these black boys and black girls and many young black men and black women grew up in single mother households that were filled with a lot of religious sexual shame, is that these didn't get an education as related to sex. And what happened was that they got their sexual miseducation on the street. And as they got their sexual miseducation on the streets, what happened was that many black boys basically were growing up thinking that going out here and having sex with one of these girls was a way to elevate their social status and a way to get social currency with other boys. And as they went out here thinking that this was a way to elevate their social status and go out here and get that social currency with other boys, what happened was that many of these boys basically disregarded many of the lessons about venereal diseases we got in places like junior high and believed that getting this social currency had more value than the intangible of a boy's manhood and those intangibles of dignity, self-respect, and even a person's health and life were having less value than getting that status. And that whole mindset was one of the core reasons why a lot of black boys basically wound up on a road to winding up on the road to getting HIV and eventually winding up getting full-blown AIDS, because in the 1980s, basically, again, if you got one of those venereal diseases like chlamydia or something like that, you basically could go to a free clinic. But if a person got full-blown AIDS, there was no cure for it. If you got HIV, basically, you were on the road to getting full-blown AIDS, and you were on a road to basically leaving this world through death. And sadly, when it came down to many black boys, they were not really thinking critically about that possibility. No, they were so caught up in the quest for social currency by getting a girl to give them sexual access as they drop the skid mark jockey thong and let them get a taste of the atomic waste from the special place, and hoping to brag to other guys about how they got their taste of the waste, that they weren't thinking about their overall health. No, they were just so busy caught up in getting their social status. And as they were getting caught up in their social status, what happened was that many black boys and many young black men basically wound putting themselves at risk for getting HIV and AIDS. And this whole situation also happened to many black girls who again also got that same miseducation. And as they got that miseducation, they basically were getting caught up in the whole game of hypergamy as related to the drug game. And as they were getting caught up in their hypergamy as related to the drug game, they were getting involved with these pookie type guys who were usually older than they were, guys who were ranging anywhere from 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, even 30 years old. And as these teenage girls basically were going out here, there was no father to supervise them or father to vet these guys. And as they were going out here, what was happening is they were getting with these pookie type guys who had this dope money. And as they went out here getting with these pookie type guys who had the dope money, they were giving these guys sexual access. And as they got that sexual access, basically they were looking to get that in exchange for things like shearling coats, rides in this dude's brand new Jeep or Mercedes 300E, or to get Jordan sneakers. And a lot of these folks, basically, they were going out here having sex unprotected. And as they were having sex raw, what was happening was they weren't thinking about things like venereal diseases, and they weren't thinking about getting pregnant. And this is what led to the explosion of teen pregnancies and also led to the explosion of venereal diseases, mainly HIV in the black community. And as the HIV epidemic started to spread in the black community, what was really happening was as the crack epidemic was going on, this was coinciding with the war on drugs, and eventually a lot of these pookie type guys were getting arrested. And as they were getting arrested and being put in jail, what was happening was many of these pookie type guys were out here having homosexual relations with other inmates in the jail. And as they were going out here trading themselves for the commissary because they couldn't eat the food in jail, what was happening was that after they got released, they went back to those same girls. And as they went back to those same girls after letting Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles hit it from the front and the back raw, then they went back saying that they were straight. And as they went out here saying that they were straight, this was what led to, again, a further spreading of HIV in the black community. And we started to see the numbers go up in the black community. And this basically, the sad part was that many black folks really were not paying attention as related to the dating game, and we're still going out here using an outdated method and outdated approaches to dating as related to things. And as they were out here in these streets, they were not thinking critically as they moved in these streets. No, they were not thinking critically about how this disease was out here. No, all they was thinking about was, again, either the guys out here caught up in their thirst, thinking about getting some social currency with other guys, because they really didn't want to have a relationship with these girls for who they are. I remember being in junior high school and high school and guys bullying other guys because they didn't have a girlfriend and looking to tell them that there was something wrong with them, when in actuality the person who had something wrong with them were these guys who got this sexual miseducation and basically were out here looking to get relationships as related to elevating their social status and looking to get social currency with as related to sexual access. And they were getting with these girls who were out here in these streets, not just with the dope boys, but also out here looking to go out here and talk to the square dudes. Because what was going on with a lot of these girls was they were out here playing the field. A lot of these girls had a boyfriend, a husband, and a man, or in many cases, they had 2, 3 boyfriends, and all those guys were out here hitting it with these chicks. And basically, it was like folks playing Russian roulette with their genitals. And this, again, is why we had this explosion of HIV and AIDS in the mid 1990s, because this basically, people knew that there was an AIDS epidemic going on in the black community, but sadly many black folks did not take it seriously, and that's the thing that basically screwed up the entire dating game. It screwed up the entire dating game because folks out here basically, because they had this foundation of sexual shame from many black folks growing up in these single mother and religious households, wouldn't tell their kids about sex and wouldn't tell them about the dangers of VD. And as a result, what happened is you had folks going out here in these streets having these relationships that really were not based on love. You had these thirsty dudes who basically were caught up in their lust, again, looking to get that social currency out of these girls. And then you had a lot of these dope boys who again had this big money trying to trick to get these chicks. And as they were out here, this is what led to the baby mama epidemic, and then further led to the AIDS epidemic, because as these same girls were out here with these pookie type guys who again were in these jails getting traded for those Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, and packets of Crystal Light lemonade, they were basically coming in the jail and giving Mr. Sprinkles a taste of the carbon rod. But the whole thing is that they would come out on these streets and say that they were straight. And that basically, again, was another thing that spread it, especially among black women. And a lot of black women, they would think, oh, I got this guy, and he's straight on the outside, but he's living a down low life, and basically, again, giving it up raw to other men. And also, you had a lot of these thirsty square dudes, again, looking to get with the same chicks. And that's how we got this whole AIDS epidemic and STD epidemic here that's going on right now. The foundations of it basically started in the 80s. And the sad part is that a lot of those folks, again, they didn't take things seriously as related to the dating market, and they put social currency above their health. That was the thing that really just would frustrate me back in the 80s when I was a teenager, was that many of these folks, you would try to sit down and tell them, hey, man, you got to look out for yourself, because either you could wind up becoming a baby daddy, or you could wind up with one of these diseases, and they basically would brush it off. They would brush it completely off and basically just tell you that there was something wrong with you for wanting to look out for your health and want to look out for your own life, because for them having that social currency with other people to say, oh, I got with that light-skinned chick, or I got with that bad chick, I got with that chick, but I'm not thinking about, again, what's going to be the problem, again, later on as related to that situation, where if this chick basically, yeah, she's the light-skinned bad chick, but she's basically got 4 or 5 different guys, and eventually you might wind up in a situation where if she's been with 4 or 5 different guys, and one of them is one of these pookie types who was in jail getting some from Mr. Sprinkles, you might wind up on a road to being in the same place that she is, where she's got this disease and you've got this disease. And again, it was that indifference that made the whole situation even more dangerous in the black community. A lot of black people basically did not take HIV and AIDS very seriously. No, they took getting somebody to, again, drop the skid mark jockey draws as having more value than their own lives. And that's one of the things that basically was the scariest part about being in the 1980s, because these folks would look to not only, again, not have regard for their own lives, but insist you not have a regard for your own life. Because I remember being bullied over this. And again, these people never thinking about their own life or anybody else's life. It was all about, hey, I gotta get this pussy, or I gotta go get with this guy who got this money. It was all about what they could get at the time in the short term, and never thinking once about the long term. And that basically is how they basically destroyed the entire dating market as related to things, because people did not take HIV and AIDS seriously. I mean, and it still goes on today, almost 35 years later. Almost 35 years later, this is why we have explosions of STDs in places like Houston. Again, large black communities where folks are going out here and, again, just casually hooking up. And as they casually hook up with each other, what happens is that this is how we get these diseases spreading, just like they did almost 35 years ago in the late 80s and all the way in the mid 90s, where things basically hit a peak, where we saw cases like Newshawn Williams, a guy who basically was one of these Pookie type guys who infected, I think, about 15, 16 women with HIV, and many young girls basically winding up getting HIV. And basically, at that time, we finally started to get a little bit of medicine as related to the situation. It wasn't like the early 90s or the late 80s, where basically if you got HIV, you wound up dying. But the thing is, you got stuck with an incurable disease. And the sad thing is that the black community, sadly, was still slow on the uptake and didn't look to shift gears as related to that whole situation. And the sad part is that nothing really has changed. Because when I looked at this picture again, here you have a picture that a brother is making here in 2026. And it shows me how little has changed from 1986. Nothing has really changed in the black community as related to the dating game. And a lot of guys are still out here thinking it's better to play Russian roulette with their penis. And a lot of girls are thinking it's better to play Russian roulette with their vaginas. They're not thinking critically and saying, if I don't do anything, I can't get anything. They don't really understand why a guy like me would go out here and, again, look to avoid dealing with women or live the Marlboro Man lifestyle, as Brian Solange calls it. A lot of smart guys are saying, look, I see all of these chicks out here with these types of guys. Again, don't want to be in a situation where you put yourself at risk, either at the minimum, again, of getting jacked up by this Pookie type dude, or in the worst case situation, they giving you a venereal disease because they basically run in them streets. Again, many black folks, again, we are behind the 8 ball when it came down to the whole HIV AIDS situation. And the sad part is that almost 40 years later, people still behind the 8 ball. That's what was presented in this picture. Still behind the 8 ball as related to the world of dating and relationships, and have not adapted their behavior. No, have not adapted their behavior one bit, because that's why we still have explosions of STDs in places like Houston and explosions of HIV in the black community in places like Houston, and also with that white DJ who was out here smashing many of these black chicks and spreading a incurable, deadly disease. Again, this is happening because black folks, again, are still behind the 8 ball, didn't change their dating game, did not adapt their dating game. And part of that is due to the complete, again, shame of the black single mother and there not being a black family unit to teach boys how to operate as related to the game. That's another part of this whole situation. A lot of these guys out here, they don't know how to move, especially these square dudes. A lot of these square dudes basically were simps and still are simps, and they don't know how to move whatsoever. And whenever they see a beautiful chick out here, what they want to do is go out here and immediately get caught up in their feelings, looking to smash that chick, not understanding that they could demolish their entire life with a bad choice. No, all they're thinking about is having this relationship to get the points with the fellas, not understanding that if you have a relationship, the relationship is supposed to be between you and your woman. That's something I basically learned later on in life, that your relationships is not supposed to be about the fellas or anybody out here. But you got black boys who grew up like this in the 80s and the 90s, and that whole frame of thinking basically was one of the reasons why so many dudes wound up with HIV, wound up with their whole lives being messed up, because they didn't know how to have a protocol on how to move. And if you understood how to have a protocol, how to move, you understood, okay, when it comes to these women, I got to think twice before I get involved with them, because I don't want to get no HIV. I don't want to get tuned up in child support court or anything like that. And that's why, again, smart men basically would say, hey, I'm just going to stay away from them like I did in '89, because I saw what was going on. Again, single mother epidemic and this AIDS epidemic, and nobody in the black community was thinking critically about their lives. No, nobody was thinking to say, hey, let me pull back on trying to get with this chick. I mean, I remember reading an Essence magazine article. There was this light-skinned chick. She had full-blown AIDS, and she said that there were dudes still trying to holler at her, and some of them still trying to get to hit it. And that was the most disturbing thing to me, was when I read that article and saw how thirsty these guys were, that they would basically go out here and look to still get that sexual access, knowing this woman already had AIDS and had a disease that was going to kill her. But they would rather go out here and have a moment where they could brag with their friends rather than think about their own life. And that whole frame of thinking was one of the things that led to AIDS spreading in the black community. And the sad part is that nothing really has changed. I mean, if you think that, again, every other community understood, okay, we need to change the way we move out here. We need to change how we operate, because this disease is killing people. I mean, the alphabet community overall just totally changed the way they move. The white community changed the way they move. Everybody changed the way that they move, but the black community still behind the 8 ball. And when I look at that picture, it really is very tragic, because it just shows how many of us brothers really are behind in the game and don't see how we're playing ourselves by not understanding how to move in them streets. Now, if you want to learn how to move in these streets and identify female predators, you can pick up my books like the Simp series, like Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance, and Stop Simping in the Workplace, Stop Simping in Cyberspace, and books like Miss Manginus and Misadventures of Captain Save-'em, and The Man Crisis and the Woman Crisis, why 70% of black women are single. You can find all that nonfiction on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find all of that nonfiction at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to see me talk about the 80s and many of the issues that people went through in the 80s, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App to help me stay on the air. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Runway of Doom. The goddess next door struts her stuff on the catwalk to take on a runway of rogues in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS Runway of Doom at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, An Offer He Can't Refuse. The man who rules the world gets a job offer he can't refuse in this action-packed all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, An Offer He Can't Refuse at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.